There's no mountain too high.
Hear these words and have faith.
He lives in me. He lives in me. Just is over. Everything. He lives in me. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good evening. My name is Cyrus Gray, and today is our 13th edition of Elections Central. Today we're going to be main topic of discussion today will be the highly talked about phenomenon in Liberia, the Congo and the country divide. And the main discussions on that will start on the hour at 2 o'clock Central Time, 3 o'clock Eastern Time, and 7 o'clock GMT in Monrovia. So as we have started now our new tradition, we burn the first 30 minutes before the show starts to discuss, we call it a pre-show, to give a little more context to the discussion for today. So today on the main show, we're going to be having a group of panelists from a wide spectrum of Liberian society. We are expecting George Tooley from Canada, James Wright also from Canada, George Parker, and then Emmanuel Johnson. I'm not sure what George Parker is. He's probably in Arizona, but Emmanuel Johnson is in the New England area, probably in Massachusetts. But we're going to be expecting them on the hour. But for now, I'm going to do a quick run on the historical antecedent about the topic we are talking about today, because I think there are a lot of misconceptions about Liberia relative to the issue of a divide between indigenous people and the sons of settlers. So I prepared a few slides that we're going to run through, and then when we come to the main show, we get to the meat of the discussion and bring it to the reality of today, especially as we go towards election. So give me a second, and I'll be right back with you. There's no mountain too high.
Hear these words and have faith. Oh,
Hey, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Cyrus Gray. We had hoped to run the last 30 minutes during the pre-show, but we had some glitches here. I know you may have noticed that we're not coming out with sound. I'm sorry for that. Very soon we'll bring the rest of our team. You wouldn't miss anything. What we wanted to talk about, we're going to talk about. We have a prepared slide of 10 slides that deals with the issue of early Liberia, the origin of discrimination. The panelists have been given copies of this, so it will serve as the basis of our discussion. So, welcome to Elections Central. And as we get our team in a short order, we will introduce them one after one, and then we get to business. Welcome to Election Central.
there's no mountain too great. Hear these words and have faith. Oh, he lives in you. He lives in me. He watches over everything we see. Into the water, into the truth, in your reflection, he lives in you. He lives in you. He lives in you. He lives in me. He watches over everything you see. Into the water, into the truth, in your reflection. He lives in you. He lives in you. He lives, oh yeah. He lives in me. He watches over everything we see. Into the water, into the truth, in your reflection. He lives, he lives, he lives, he lives in you.
Today's show is dedicated to the memory of Mrs. Willette Bryan Ford, the wife of Mr. Effie Ford. Mrs. Ford left us on May 5th, 2023. She was a dedicated research librarian, spent most of her career working with what we know today to be the National Bank. I've known Mrs. Ford for several years. She's the mother of Thurma, Tus, and Kwekwe. During our school days in high school and in college and cutting down, she made her home our home. So I like to remember her in a special way and send our deepest condolences to the family of the porch, and my brother Sam Suda.
Deep in my heart, I do believe someday we'll all be free. Someday we'll all be free. I may not know how long 'twill be. Someday we'll all be free. Someday we'll all be free. Someday we'll all be free. Hold on, my brother, give me your hand. Someday we'll all be free. Someday we'll all be free. Learning to love, we'll find our way. Someday we'll all be free. Someday we'll all be free. Someday we'll all be free. We shall overcome. We shall I do believe someday we'll all be free. Someday we'll all be free. We shall overcome someday.
Oh, okay. Hey, today's Mother's Day. For those of you mothers out there, happy Mother's Day. I know everybody is engaged, spreading this love and appreciation to moms. This is also graduation weekend in many places. So if you have somebody who have made that achievement and graduated, take from us our warmest congratulations. Okay, so let's get back to business, right? Again, our topic today, Congo and country divide. And we had initially thought to do intro using the pre-show, but we have enough time to deal with it as our panelists join us. So let me get back into that. I realized I had said earlier that we had some sound problems here, so we didn't do what we needed to do in the pre-show. So we're going to compress that and do that. So let's begin with that. Let's talk about Liberia. There's this perception that we are divided people between indigenous sons and the descendants of settlers. And this perception permeates and has become a part of our history. In fact, it's used by many people, politicians, to be able to push their game. Today, the common refrain in Liberia is it is our time, meaning it's time for country people to rule. But in this critical election year, I thought we should delve into this discussion a little more. And to do that, first we need to understand what was Liberia in 1847. When you say Liberia in 1847, what does it mean? So I have said earlier, I prepared 10 slides, actually nine, if we exclude the cover page, that it's difficult to assess the history substance of the country in a very short time because there's so many things and so many nuances. But we try to talk about Liberia to get a general sense of what Liberia was in 1847 so that it informs the discussion about who we are today in the context of Congo and country, if there's anything like that. So I wanted to start with a number of maps that I've gone through. So this is one of the early maps before independence. Is the map of Liberia during the colonial period. This is 1830. So that's 17 some years before independence. At this time, the territory that is today Liberia was divided into different colonies along the coast. And those colonies were created by different organizations, mostly the American Colonization Society, the Colonization Society of Kentucky, Colonization Society of Mississippi, or the Philadelphia and New York Society, the Maryland Colonization Society, and all that. And they had different arrangements. These were colonies in the real sense of the word. So when you say Liberia was not colonized, every time we hear that, it's not totally true. Uh, if it means that we were not colonized by a nation state, then that's it. But Liberia was a colony of philanthropic organizations with nations in the backdrop. So the Africans who made up the colony did not govern themselves; they were governed by white governors. So if you go into Liberia today, especially in the downtown area, you will see a memory to those governors are still in the names of streets, Randall Street, McLean Street. Those were names of former governors of the colonies. But let's look at this map, and we look at a few maps so we get a context of what Liberia was, and then the narrative coming from this map. These maps are provided from the Library of Congress, and they were given to the Library of Congress by the American Colonization Society. So this map, as I said earlier, is from 1830, and most of the territories I talk about are along the coast. So the territory of Liberia ran from Sierra Leone, from the Galanas territory in Sierra Leone, called somewhere called the Shabu River, and then they ran all the way to what is Sino today, and then there was a gap. The Maryland settlement was independent from the Liberia colonies, and then the Liberian territory picked up again after Harper, about 60 miles into what is Ivory Coast today, into what is the Baribo territories. So let's read the narrative here. So they said from the Galanas River in what is Sierra Leone today, all the way down to the Cruz sector, 280 miles. Cruz sector is in the Sino area today, was what was the coast of Liberia. And it was about 20 to 30 miles into the interior. That means if we say Kakata is 75 kilometers, then maybe it's in the neighborhood of Kakata, not beyond that. And inside these territories that were considered Liberian territories were also enclaves of tribal settlements. So you had a Vai tribe in the areas from the Galanas territory, from Sierra Leone, all the way to Kidman. Then you had the Dane, In fact, they describe it as active, warlike, and proud people. You had the Dane from Cape Mount, little Cape Mount, all the way to downtown to the Masorado River. You had the Dane people occupying those coastal territories. And then you had the Bassa people. The Bassa people would come to run from the Masorado River all the way southwest beyond Grand Bassa River says and the rest of that. But note, they were all along the coastal territories. These were considered maritime tribes. They were coastal tribes. Now, at a distance of 30 to 50 miles inland, away from the coast, you had a huge, almost impossible forest along the whole coast that you to penetrate it, you will be walking for a day or two. That means, say, if you want to go from Kakata beyond, it was almost impossible. The author of this map was saying that it was so difficult that the civilized world did not know anything about what was happening beyond the Liberian coastal territory. That is in 1830, in this part of the African continent. All right. Let's look at another map, see if it gives a little more explanation. So this is a map coming from during the same period, and it shows the same coastal territories and no knowledge about the territories beyond 20 to 25 miles from the coast. The term map is the Republic of Liberia in 1849. So by 1849, we declared independence 2 years earlier, and Liberia was basically those coastal territories now united as one government. So that excluded Maryland also. So by 1849, we had territories 50 miles from the Emmanuel River in Cape Mount into Sierra Leone as Liberian territory. Then after after Cape Palmas, we had another 60 miles into Ivory Coast, the Bar River territory as Liberian territory. Let's see the and again to restate the influence of the government in this territory did not go into the interior. In fact, there are works documents that no citizen of Liberia was allowed to negotiate directly with the tribes for land. Only the ACS could do that. Then the origin of the original citizens of Liberia in 1847. I'm taking this trend so that we get some context before we begin to discuss the issue of Congua country and see, how whether it makes sense or what's the substance of it or whether it's superficial, right? So in 1847, I divided the groups that made up the Liberian citizenry into four. The first group were descendants of slaves and former slaves from various states in the United States of America. And even in this group, they were divided into categories. The first one we want to mention is that the uneducated former slaves freed by the federal government after compensating their owners. So the U.S. government passed a law starting with the District of Columbia, where they would give a slave owner $300 so that he frees the slave. The $300 is paying for his property, right? But a large number of these slaves, once freed, especially those that were free under this arrangement in the southern states, were also free on condition that they get on the ship and come to Africa. And come to Africa means they come to the Liberian colonies. So a large number of the slaves that came here who had just been slaves, who didn't have any basic education or basic skills beyond servitude, just working, doing stuff for people, cutting stuff. A good number of the people who came here fell in that category. Then you have former slaves looking for a better life in the land of their forefathers. So there were others who became free and who made the decision that they would take advantage of this colonial movement and come to Africa, to Liberia. Then you had wealthy former sons of slaves. So there were a number of those who came who had not been slaves. Their fathers were plantation owners, so they were mixed race. So they were one way or the other. They had wealth, and they were born free, but they suffered indignation in America. They were treated also as black people, so they took advantage of this and came to Liberia. They were part of the original Liberian territory. In fact, before independence, they thrived in Liberia. They were wealthy farmers. They were traders. There's a story about Coslow Francis Donovan. These were wealthy guys. I think Francis Donovan, a British company, tried to buy his company before independence, and he spat in the white guy's face. They were wealthy. Then you had also dark skinned wealthy elites who also were wealthy in America, but took advantage of this opportunity to be the master ahead of for the development of their own country. Some of them were in academia, some of them. E.J. Raw is the poster child of that group. He's graduated from Ohio State. Before coming to Liberia, E.J. Raw owned his own ship on the Ohio River. So he was dark skinned. In fact, his father originated from Nigeria. He was an Igbo. So he came to Liberia wealthy also. So he was part of that early republic. Then the second group I like to talk about, general group, are the recaptured slaves from either slave ships or from ships that were still appear at African ports loading slaves. By 1808, the transatlantic slave trade had been abolished. So it was illegal to take slaves from Africa to the Americas, even though slavery was still practiced in America. So there was this practice where freelancer and the U.S. and British Navy would be on the Atlantic looking for slave ships. If they seize a slave ship, they would take the cargo and the ship and report them to America. But what was happening earlier, if they seize a ship with slaves on it, they would take the slave to America, they take possession of the ship, but the slaves would still be auctioned on the slave market. There were specific instances of that. The Amistad, there's another story called the Antelope. There's a story about a group, they call them, but somewhere in the port of Georgia, who were being held at the port while their case was being heard, and they walk over the ship, they board the ship into the sea one by one, and they would rather drown than be free as slaves. We can talk about that a little later. But they led by a U.S. general called Miser. They decided, so what's the point of abolishing the transatlantic slave trade if seized ships will still be brought here and the slaves auctioned? So they passed a law in Congress to award $100,000 to the Liberian colony. This is the $100,000 that led to naming of the city of Monrovia in honor of James Monroe, even though he never set foot in Liberia and never even advocated for Liberia. But because of this $100,000, the Liberian authorities will now be responsible to make a place for recaptured slaves. So if slaves are recaptured on the Atlantic or in any African port, instead of being taken to America, they were brought to Liberia. And the Liberian authorities set up what was then part of the interior in Congua town and made it the settlement for those who were being brought on recaptured slaves. They named it Congua town because most of the slaves that were being recaptured were coming from the major slave ports around the Congo basin, were mostly Congo people. Now, how every settler, a descendant, became to be called Congo people, we'll get into that later on. And there are some prominent Liberians whose fathers or parents were among these people. There is also the issue of a vessel called the Nightingale, and I have a slide for that is related to this recapture slave that we want to talk about after I deal with this. This fourth group were indigenous male adult property owners who were part of those tribes that were already in the area that was declared the Republic of Liberia. So once they were of age, male, the women were not considered citizens, or at least could not vote. They would have to be male, adult, and they would have to own property. They were citizens of Liberia also. Then you had Africans from neighboring territories, from Sierra Leone and other places, who came over to become citizens of Liberia. So those were the general groups that made up the configuration. Note that the tribal territories, Gios, Manus, Madingos, Loma, Kisi, Pele, who were beyond that coastal limit of the Republic of Liberia were not citizens of Liberia. They were not citizens of Liberia. They were not because they were prevented from doing so, but they didn't fall within the jurisdiction of the Republic of Liberia. And I will explain later on why I say that they didn't desire citizenship, and it's not that they were being deprived of it. Yeah. Then okay, I said the Nightingale. The Nightingale was one of the largest slave ships that would take slaves from Africa to America. In fact, it was called the Prince of Slavers. The ships are slavers. But the Nightingale made its last voyage with slaves to Liberia. In 1861, it was seized by a U.S. naval ship, the Saratoga, at the port of Cabinda along the Congo Basin. By then, it was already loaded with 961 slaves, women, men, children, held in bonds, ready to be carried to America. But once the ship was seized, it was directed to Liberia, and the slaves, the cargo, were handed over to the government of Liberia as freemen in 1861. But from Cabinda to Liberia, they lost about 160 some more of the passengers on board the vessel for various reasons. I mean, you can imagine how they were cramped on the ship, if there was sickness and all that. But between the Congo and Liberia, they lost that many people. So 809 persons were offloaded in Liberia, and they were settled in along with those who are earlier coming, what is today Congo town. The Nightingale never carried another slave. You can get more details of that from my book, 2016 book, Negro Nation. I think it's still in publication. Okay, then this next slide deals with that question that I raised about the territories beyond the territory of Liberia. Uh, the notion that we carry, most Liberians, is that, oh, these people from the country Liberia, and we were from Nima County were deprived. Our people were not allowed to be citizens. No. So this map is 1869. It was drawn by Benjamin J.K. Anderson, who went on an expedition on the western side, the western interior of the country. He was headed to find the western kingdom of the Mandingos in a city called Musada, because they've all heard about it along the coast, about this thriving civilization. And he was an explorer. He set up on that expedition funded by the government of Liberia and some philanthropists in America to go along that route and take note of what he saw. So Benjamin J.K. Anderson leaves Monrovia and he heads due west through the Vai Gola territory. He ends up in Bopolu, in what is today Bapolu County. And read. I'm gonna read. Find this. You can find it online easily. It's called Joining to Find the Western Kingdom of Mandingos in Musada. Yes, Musada is around about. If you conduct a search, a Google search, you'll find it. It's an interesting read, and it gives you a picture of what's going on around that time. You had thriving civilization in Popolu. Benjamin J.K. Anderson said he went into a market and there were a thriving market. I mean, just about everything. They were smelting iron, making tools out of iron. There were large cattle markets. They were trading in people also, still selling slaves. Um, they said there was some monthly pilgrimage from Bopolu to Tangbutu. Timbuktu is in Mali, the famous city that had one of the oldest earlier universities. Then he also says something that's mind blowing, that he was hosted by an Islamic cleric at his house, and in the evening he sat on the porch with the cleric as they took his fresh fish out of the pond in the yard. So that means they were doing aquaculture. Why am I saying this? Based on Benjamin J.K. Anderson's narrative, it seems to suggest to me that the guys in Bopolu may have been more advanced in several ways than those in the Republic of Liberia around that time, 1869. If you notice what was happening in the Republic of Liberia, it was still a backward society. It's a primitive, made mostly of former slaves, many of whom, even though they were given land, they didn't know how to till the soil. If you read some of their letters and messages back to America to their former owners, there were those who were even opting to go back to America that would prefer to be slaves and all that. So it does not paint a picture as though uh, this Republic of Liberia it was so great an experiment that people who were in the interior were being barred from becoming citizens or that they were anxious to do that. There's also an instance where, in the early part of the colony settlement, there was a dispute between the settlers and one or two of the coastal chiefs, and they sent for a chief in Bopolu. Salboso came to adjudicate that, and he didn't come like somebody who was just a mediator. He came with authority. The works that we've read said that he threatened the chief after he heard everything. He said, "Look, you sold this land to these people, and you can't be coming back over and over and making noise over here as though you haven't sold it to them. So it belongs to them. And the next time I have to come here to talk this same thing, I will chop your head off like I chopped the other chief head off." This guy who came from Bopolu, so it looked like Bopolu, they had authority and they were confident in themselves. So it doesn't suggest some guy who were trying to be a part of Liberia. If I've made that point, then we come to the at independence. There were two schools of thought among the leaders of Liberia, and the sets of leaders of Liberia, the two groups were distinct. So through the period of the Commonwealth, where you had a white governor, and then the white governor was eventually replaced by Joseph Junior Rivers, who became a governor of the Commonwealth that was formed in 1839, and then independence, he got elected as the first president. J.J. Rivers was of the mixed race group, and they had a party called the Republican Party or the Liberian Party. That was the first and most influential party. It was made mostly out of mixed race and Liberians of European ancestry. So they, as a matter of principle, they did not want to extend the Liberian territory to include more indigenous people. They wanted the coastal territory to be as they were. And if they were going to be increasing or swelling their ranks with citizens, they should go back to the United States and seek for more former slaves or people like them to constitute the republic. Their fear was that if you open up the country to the larger population of indigenous people, then they will be undermining their influence and authority. One of the things that were happening to them, they were most susceptible to tropical diseases, so and their children were dying quicker. So they were vehemently opposed to bringing more darker skinned people into the republic. On the contrast was the other group of dark skinned wealthy Liberians. And the poster child for them was E.J. Raw. E.J. Raw was wealthy. He was in government. So he was also learned. So they were the ones who were behind the intellectual part of the development of the country. Eventually, setting up the University of Liberia in 1851. So there was E.J. Raw, there was Edward Wilmot Bladin, there was Alexander Cromwell. They sought to build a Liberia that was a macrocosm of the entire Negro race. So they wanted to extend the territory to include more black people, to exploit the resources in the continent to build a great black nation. They were the first Pan-Africanists, if I may say. So they were at loggerhead with the Republican Party. Eventually, they founded their own party in 1869, and E.J. Raw contested. The party contested the election in 1869 with E.J. Raw as their candidate. and he won the elections. Now, when Ejiro won the election, the first thing he does is he gets the Speaker of the House, who is part of the party, William Spencer Anderson. And they said that William Spencer Anderson was, by that time, the welfare Liberian, the wealthiest Liberian. He had come to Liberia at 20 years old, initially a barber, but he got himself a sugarcane farm, plantation, started producing sugarcane and coffee and exporting, and he became wealthy. So he took an expedition into the interior to try to win more territories. So it essentially reads, they say he undertook an expedition to drive a road from Monrovia to Mosudugu in what is now Burkina Faso. Anderson was tasked with establishing the road, protected by a series of fortified posts to link Monrovia to Mosudugu. He was authorized to purchase land and negotiate treaties with the local tribes in order to facilitate this. Anderson reached Baikwiri, having brought some 150,000 people under Liberian control and purchased 250 square miles of land. So he started to execute the policy of the True Party, which they formed in 1869 to create a larger Republic of Liberia. You already know that it didn't go down good with the Republican Party and Joseph Junior Ramos. While Ejiro was now the fifth president of Liberia. Something peculiar happened around his time, and we'll go through that details on what leads to his demise and that of the plan that they had. When Anderson went into the interior and extended territory, they ran out of money. So they came back to Monrovia and asked the legislature to give them the power to take a loan. So the legislature approved that, but with a limit that they could not borrow more than $500,000. So Anderson, leading a team that was set up by E.J. Roy, made out of him, Anderson as the head, William Spencer Anderson, the Attorney General at the time, a guy called Henry Johnson, who was a practicing lawyer, had been a practicing lawyer in New York, who left New York and migrated to Liberia with his family, and John Lewis. John Lewis is a famous Liberian general. He's one of the signatories to the Declaration of Independence. John Lewis was related to Joseph Junior Ramos in that he and Joseph Junior Ramos were married to two sisters. Joseph Junior Ramos was married to Jane, and John Lewis was married to Susanna Lewis, who is credited to have led the team that sold the Liberian flag. But he was a famous guy. So this is a strongman team of John Lewis, Henry Johnson, William Spencer Anderson. So they go to Britain and they cut a deal. And the loan that they took became very unpopular with the people. But if you look at the entire climate of why they were taking the loan and how it was being, the whole idea was being opposed by the Republican Party, I can understand why the narrative is that the loan was bad. But what it did was that being businessmen, the interest on the loan was very, very high. So rather than take the loan and amortize the interest over time, they had the lender take the interest off the principal that was going to be given to them. So instead of a $500,000 loan, if you took the interest, if it was 25%, that means you took $125,000 out of the $500,000. So they probably received cash and kind goods, $375,000. So right away, a raised the red flag by those who oppose them, that in fact they may have misappropriated the money. But Spencer Anderson, while away, E.J. Raw was removed from power by force. The first coup occurred in 1871. E.J. Raw was overthrown, imprisoned. Three-man council took over the country. Very soon they realized that they were outside the constitution. So they swear in E.J. Raw's vice president, a guy called James Kevin Smith. Unfortunately, when we were going to school, we were never taught that James Kevin Smith became president. But you can also find out that, I'll lead you online. If you search for the 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 address of the Liberian president, or the address of James Scriven Smith to the Liberian legislature, which is tantamount to the State of the Nation address, December 4th, 1871. He addressed the legislature, and that's an important speech because he tried to explain, without putting himself at risk, what was obtaining at the time, including the removal of E.J. Raw and E.J. Raw's imprisonment. So check that out. But Spencer Anderson, upon his return to Liberia, E.J. Raw now in prison, he was arrested and then he was tried. Now, guess what? Henry Johnson was arrested, but he was released because of pressure from the Americans, because he still had his daughters and all in New York, and they brought pressure to bear on Joseph Jingin Ravels, because Joseph Jingin Ravels now had contested an election while E.J. Raw was president, even though it was disputed. E.J. Raw claimed that the referendum had given him 4 years, but Joseph Jingin Ravels and the Republicans said no, 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 gave him only 2 years. So they went ahead, had an election. Joseph Jingin Ravels ran uncontested and he won. So when E.J. Raw was removed, his vice president installed, he served his E.J. Raw's remaining term from November to January, and he handed power to Joseph Jingin Ravels. Joseph Jingin Ravels came back to become the seventh president of Liberia after being the first president, I think, serving 6 terms. But back to Anderson. Anderson is taken to court and he's tried for this $500,000 and he is acquitted. But as he walks out of the courthouse on September 27, 1872, he is shot before the courthouse, assassination style, and killed by another wealthy Liberian called Jesse Sharp, who was one of Joseph Jingin Ravels' guy in the Republican Party. So they literally roll back everything that E.J. Raw and his team in the True Wheat Party group had done. So the True Wheat Party literally went under, and the Republican Party dominated Liberian politics again for up to 1899. Okay, we will leave that for another day. Let's come on to the issue of the conflicts that also is the underpinning of the divide between the country and the Congo. So the history will see a lot of conflicts from the beginning between the Monrovia government and different tribal groups for different reasons. So for the purpose of this argument, I tried to size up 3 general reasons for which there were these conflicts. One reason was over slavery. So by the time of independence, there was still slavery going on along the Liberian coast. And a good number of the coastal tribes were opposed to Liberian settlement when they realized that one of their principal objectives was to abolish the slave trade along the Liberian coast. So there was cause for wars here and there, right? So even before independence, when Lord Carey was made the head of the colony after Jehuda Ashman has left, one of the colony's warehouses in a place called Dabe, maybe around the Po River area, was seized by the Ba Angola tribesmen and given to a slaver to store his human cargo in preparation for getting them to the coast to be sold. So negotiations between the colony and the tribe did not materialize. So Lakere ordered his guys to get ready for war. Now, they were sitting in an enclosed house and they were putting petals into gunpowder to make bombs and prepare them for the war when a candle caught one of the explosives they made and it blew up in the house and eventually led to the death of Lap Carey and some other people who were in there together. One of the other instances of war between the tribes and the settlement over slaves was the Galanas territory. Galanas territory was the territory from Ravascos on to the Chevron. It was a major slaving area. In fact, there are movies about the Amistad, the vessel Amistad that was seized by the slave, where they seized the crew and killed them is reported to have come from the Galanas. But Roberts made it his business that once Liberia declared independence, he will declare war on those slave stations. And he did that and succeeded and eradicated slavery along Liberia's spheres of influence. Some of the wars in the Crew era in Sino all was about slavery also. Not only about slavery, but to some extent about the disruption of the trade between the tribes and the European traders. So the European traders have been trading with the tribes for ages before Liberia became independent, and part of that trade was slave trade. So when the Liberian government and colony started to regulate that, the tribes were not happy about it, so it led to all kinds of conflict. Then there is the issue of piracy. The Liberian coast is a very rough coast because you have two waves of water moving in opposite direction. So in those days where they didn't have really advanced crafts, you had to be a master to come into port in Liberia. And many ships would capsize coming into Liberia. Once the ship capsized, it was an age-old tradition that everything on the ship became game for the coastal tribes. A capsized ship, they would rush there and they would take what they can take. And maybe in the process, if you one of the survivors, you're trying to fight back, they're going to fight you, right? So it was common along the coast. So there were many, many instances where once you had a Liberian authority, they would try to make an effort to either arrest or stop the piracy that was going on in the Liberian coast, and were always met by resistance from the coastal tribes because it was as though these guys have come and settled here and they're interfering into something that we think is fair and that has been our customs for ages. So there's this issue about a vessel in the Nana crew era, a German vessel that was seized by the crews, and the German crew was stripped naked and made to walk from where they seized the ship all the way for almost a day or so to Greenville. And because of that, the Germans sent a warship and they bombarded from the sea, they bombarded Nana crew and went to Monrovia and demanded that the Liberian government pay for the damages or else they will also destroy Monrovia. I think the Liberian government paid them about £900 or roundabout to resolve that issue. Then there's also a vessel called the Mary Carver, an American vessel that went into the Baribe territory, today Ivory Coast, that was also Liberian territory, and was seized by the Baribe guys and they killed the crew. And the U.S. ship went there with the Liberian president, then Governor J.J. Robert on board, and literally destroyed the Baribe territory. So that's one of the issues. They all important between indigenous and the Monrovia government. Then there was this general issue of the rejection of the Monrovia administration. The people didn't want to be tasked, and they will fight back. Um, they when the interior got open, there were incidents with the Mano and Gio War where the Liberian new army called the Frontier Force had been created in the early 1900s, and they would go in there to quell those rebellions, and they would uh, do excesses, kill people, take people's stuff, and all that. So that was another major area of conflict. And at that time, in fact, like the Liberian government was also aided by U.S. military advisors who were here helping to form that force, and their works, books, and reports that they've written about that period, including the 1912 execution of 8 Bandi Kisi chiefs at the order of the Liberian administrator J. David Cooper and Colonel William D. Lomas. Even though after killing those chiefs, they were finally arrested and brought to Monrovia, they were tried, but they were released, they were acquitted. Their excuse was that it was military emergency that allowed them to act in such a manner, and the court uh, accepted those excuses and released them. Then there was the Grable Wars. The wars mainly one group of the interior Grables against the administration of the coastal territories. In fact, the war eventually led to the Maryland government ceding their territory to the Republic of Liberia and becoming part of Liberia. There were instances, in fact, where the Grables and some of the coastal tribes would prefer to raise the British flag rather than be with the Monrovia government. So that ingrained conflict between the indigenous people and the Monrovia government started to take root in those early days. Now, why the name Congo uh, have been ascribed to all the descendants of settlers, even though we've done a demarcation between the people who made up the first republic, and only one such group were Congo people, those people who were recaptured slaves that were settled mainly in Congo town. The reason being that this group was where the frontier force was recruited most. This group and those who came from the Loma side who were most susceptible to orders. But majority of the group that made up the frontier force were among these common people who did not have kinship with the people in the interior. So they will be very ruthless and they wouldn't exercise discretion. So that notoriety that got attached to the Congo people dealing with the native people in the interior almost got generalized to the extent that the people in the interior looked at all the people in the Monrovia government coming from the coast Congo as Congo people. Okay, we'll take a short break. We're trying to auction in. I see some of our guests are struggling to come in. We're trying to auction in so we can go to some of the details of this discussion relative to our contemporary issues. So bear with me. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back. Let's play our president.
They try to track me down. For what? I don't know. Oh, Mr. Liarman, you know I didn't do the thing you say I do. Oh, Mr. Liarman. Joe Rastafari, King Selassie, big up, oh, Mr. Liarman. Oh, Mr. Liarman. Oh, Mr. Liarman. Oh, Mr. Liarman. You know I didn't do the thing you say I do. Oh, Mr. Liarman. Oh, Liarman, you know. Liarman, you know. I didn't do those things. Oh, Mr. Liarman. God, no. I didn't do those things. Oh, Mr. Liarman. Mr. Liarman. Rastafari, no. I didn't do. Oh, Mr. Liarman, you know, you know, you know, you know, a liarman, a liarman, a liarman, you a liarman, oh, Mr. Liarman, you know I didn't do the thing you say I do, oh, Mr. Liarman, Rastafari, King Selassie, big up, I didn't do this, liarman. In my own country, they try to track me down. For what? I don't know. Oh, Mr. Liarman, you know I didn't do the thing you say I do. Oh, Mr. Liarman. Joe Rastafari, King Selassie, big up, oh, Mr. Liarman, oh, Mr. Liarman, oh, Mr. Liarman, oh, Mr. Liarman. You know I didn't do the thing you say I do, oh, Mr. Liarman. Oh, Liarman, you know, Liarman, you know, I didn't do those things. Oh, Mr. Liarman, God, no, I didn't do those things. Oh, Mr. Liarman, Mr. Liarman, Rastafari, no, I didn't do. Oh, Mr. Liarman, you know, you know, you know, you know, a liarman, a liarman, a liarman, you a liarman, oh, Mr. Liarman. You know I didn't do the thing you country. They trying to track me down. For what? I don't know. Oh, Mr. Liar Man, you know I didn't do the thing you say I do. Oh, Mr. Liar Man.
It's a lie, man.
Joe Rastafari, King Selassie.
Okay, welcome back. Here's Election Central.
Seize the day.
I'll tell you what. Look, let's rule out the discussion
Opportunity.
about the perceptions that surrounds
This is our time.
the issue of the country
Understand here today?
and Congo
Let me
divide
show you that.
uh, by playing a couple of tracks, and I will start first with Chechipo. Chechipo is before the TRC, and let me give you some context about Chechipo. So Chechipo was brought to Monrovia from the southeast. He had gone to look for help for somebody to send him to school. And he was brought to Monrovia while President Tottenham was visiting by one of the officials there who fall in the category of Conga person, and brought him to Monrovia. And he eventually was sent to school by Joseph Chessing, who was then Attorney General, sent to the United States, graduated from law school, came back to Liberia. He worked with the government, Togo government, assistant minister. Togo encouraged him to run as senator of Grand Gila County. He ran and won as senator. In fact, according to himself, Tolbert put a guy from Nimba, Jackson Doe, Edo, at his disposal to help him to win, and he won. And Chechipo is in Liberia serving in government when the 1980 coup took place, and he's not looked at as uh, Congo man, even though he was serving in the same government because he was an indigenous person. So he becomes Attorney General, and he participates in the process that lead to the execution of those ministers of government who he has worked with. But for the fact that he claimed to be a countryman rather than they were Congo man. Even though in the process he had changed his name, he said at the request of his benefactor, Joseph Chessing. And by the time of the coup, his name was Joseph Chessing III. But he changed his name back to Chechipo, and he put on the garment of the Congo man, and he presided over the killing of the 13 who went to the polls. Chechipo is dead today. I know for most of his life after. He was a peculiar character. He became Chief Justice of the Republic of Liberia. I think Doe finally fired him because he tried to show out another judge who he claims came to bribe him by the name of Harper Billick. He recorded the judge acting in good faith to show that the judge was being corrupt, and he exposed the judge. And for doing that, the judge from Grand Gila County, I think Senator was not happy about it, and they eventually pushed him out of favor. And he remained in that kind of condition, unrecognized, degrading condition until eventually he died. The last I saw him, I was Minister of Foreign Affairs during President Sirleaf's administration, and he was sitting on the long line like everybody else, waiting to get his passport. And at some point, he got rage. Say, "You don't know me, I'm former Chief Justice," and he said nobody wanted to pick him up. But having said that, let's find his tape and get his view about the country and Congo. Then we'll get another view from Estrada Banai, who was the only minister that survived the coup because he had left the country a day earlier as Minister of Sports to accompany the Liberian national team that was participating in the West African Wafu tournament in Accra, Ghana. He was asked at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission a question related to Congo and country, and let's listen to what he had to say, and then we'll slide into our conversation. I'm going to put a couple of numbers up, and I'll open up Apparently, most of our panelists are probably out there with their wives and family and celebrating Mother's Day. So if when they come in, we'll get them in. But we'll open up the lines and let's have a conversation with the listeners. But we'll begin right now and see if we can pull out Churchable and let's hear what he has to say to us. Mr. Chair Chipo.
Soja mama, Uban soja oh mama, Uban soja mama, Uban soja oh mama. Say the little woman you see so, that she born a soldier. I say the country woman you lapa, that she born a soldier. Uban soja mama, Uban soja oh mama, Uban soja mama, Uban soja oh mama. I say the little woman you see so, that she born a soldier. I say the country woman you lapa, that she born a soldier. From 1847 to 1980, from 1847 to 1980, some people say soldier.
Of the collaborative political party.
All our people say soldier be no go man. But when Master Sergeant came to power, 1980, soldier become minister, soldier become council member, soldier become ambassador, soldier become superintendent. How you got them?
We are gentlemen.
Oh, how you got them?
We are gentlemen.
Oh, how you got them?
We are gentlemen.
Oh, how you got them?
We are gentlemen.
Uban soja mama, Uban soja oh mama, Uban soja mama, Uban soja oh mama. I say the country woman you see so, that she born a soldier. I say the little woman you love her, that she born a soldier. From 1847 to 1980, from 1847 to 1980, some people say soldier be foolish man. All the people say soldier be no good man. But when Master Sergeant came to power, 1980, soldier become minister, soldier become council member, soldier become ambassador, soldier become superintendent. So how you got them?
We are gentlemen.
Oh, how you got them?
We are gentlemen.
Oh, how you got them?
We are gentlemen.
Hey, soldier man,
We are gentlemen.
Pero uma bom soja, uma bom soja, passa uma bom soja, pela uma bom soja, pela uma bom soja, toma uma bom soja, e uma bom soja, mana uma bom soja, soja soja mano. Oh how you got up?
We are gentlemen. We are gentlemen.
Soja mano, yeah, soja mano, yeah. Soja mano, yeah, soja mano. Yes, yeah, my people, we are gentle people.
We are gentlemen.
Yes, yeah, soja man be gentleman.
We are gentlemen.
Soja mano, we are gentle people.
We are gentlemen.
Soja mano, we are gentle people.
We are gentlemen.
We are gentle people, mama. We are gentle people.
We are gentlemen.
We are gentle people. Soja man be gentleman.
We are gentlemen.
Yes, yeah. soldier mama? Who born soldier oh mama? Who born soldier mama? Who born soldier oh mama? Say the little woman you see so that she born a soldier. I say the country woman you lapa that she born a soldier. Who born soldier mama? Who born soldier oh mama? Who born soldier mama? Who born soldier oh mama? I say the little woman you see so that she born a soldier. I say the country woman you lapa that she born a soldier. From 1847 to 1980, from 1847 to 1980. Some people say soldier be foolish man. All of people say soldier be no man. But when Master Sergeant came to power, 1980, soldier become minister, soldier become council member, soldier become ambassador, soldier become superintendent. How you got on?
We are gentlemen.
Oh, how you got on?
We are gentlemen.
Oh, how you got on?
We are gentlemen.
Oh, how you got on?
We are gentlemen.
Who born soldier mama? Who born soldier oh mama? Who born soldier mama? Who born soldier oh mama? I say the country woman you see so that she born a soldier. I say the lady woman you love her that she born a soldier. From 1847 to 1980, from 1847 to 1980. Some people say soldier be foolish man. All of people say soldier be local man. But when Master Sergeant came to power, 1980, soldier become minister, soldier become council member, soldier become ambassador, soldier become superintendent. So how you got on?
We are gentlemen.
Oh, how you got on?
We are gentlemen.
Oh, how you got on?
We are gentlemen.
Hey, soldier man,
We are gentlemen.
Pero woman born soldier, good woman born soldier, that's a woman born soldier, good woman born soldier, good woman born soldier, lama woman born soldier, good woman born soldier, man woman born soldier, soldier man. Oh, how you got on?
We are gentlemen.
You won't believe it. We are hauling and pulling to pull things that be going wrong to pull this clip. So just bear with us a minute. We're gonna come out with either Estrella Bernay, Chachipo, or listen to President Totman on the same issue while we pull it. Okay, here you go.
I'm trying to say that my mother saw a good in me. And I wanted to make my mama happy. Just imagine rearing 9 living children in an indigenous society without health services, lack of food, problems, crime. It was difficult for my parents. And so my mother thought that at least one of us will be able to stand out when they are gone to fend for the others. I have vowed to do that, and I've been doing that. I'm not only fending for my mother's children, I fend for my tribe. I fend for my country. And therefore, I do not relent to continue to stand as long as there is life in me, to do what I can to bring peace and justice to my land. I want to take this time to tell you thank you. As I have said, introducing myself, I come from a tribal element called Ketiebo, a sub-tribe of the Grebo people. K-I-T-E-A-B-O. By record, we are warriors. We are a very small tribe, highly conservative, but we have vast land mass among bigger tribes surrounding us. My family, the Kolipo family, we are the Bodios from time immemorial. Because when the die was cast, and some family members were needed to establish our tribe, where we are now, it was the Kolipo family that came forward and made the supreme sacrifice. So I come from a family of leaders. My mother is the niece of the chairman of the True Party, Paramount Chief Tie, Solo Tie. I remember sitting between his knees when he is judging and administering transparent justice up country before coming to school. And one day he told my father upon his visitation, I grew with my aunt. As I told you, my mother had 13 births. And this is how they rear us. When mama is stone pregnant and you are just walking, Auntie Raju will come and carry you to her. She didn't have any children. And the one that was before you, they will bring him back. Because then he's able to go and get water and do other things. And so I spent time in my mother's home, and I was able to be in his town, Soloblo, and I saw him dispensing justice. So I got interested in government. My mother visited me, or my father did. And Paramount Chief Tie told my father, take care of, he went for me to go to school. So the chief told my father, take care of this boy. Now you mon come na you clever yula. It is Dwaya. This your son is the son of all your sons. So take care of him. And my father brought me, sent me to school. I went to Uncle Isaac, peace be to his ashes, in Harper City. He was a watchman in one of the business shipping companies in Harper. And so I stayed with him, we were watching. He attended the St. Teresa school, the Catholic school there, and I was in the house when he's not there. I started my school, and I did not go back until I got my college degree from America. Because of what my mother blessed me with, I didn't go through trouble about finding money. And I was not ashamed of my situation. And so, I parlayed well with all my equals. In school, yeah, I was not too brilliant, but I was sensible and an average student. I was aware of the subject matter and could relate to it when I was asked. And so, I came to Monrovia. My cousin Tie, who was the son of late Paramount Chief Tie, my mother's uncle, was taken by Tuckman to come here to school. I was in Plivo at the time. And so when Paramount Chief Tie died, Uncle Tie, as I call him, came from Monrovia on the LNA plane to attend his father's funeral. And Uncle Tie was dressed beautifully. In those days, he had on his honor clothes, white, and had on this nylon shirt. and he had attracted me beautifully. So I wanted to come to Monrovia. So anyway, I was in the seventh grade, the sixth grade. So after he left, President Tokman went to Cape Palmas with a yacht. And I wrote him I wanted to come to Monrovia to go to school, but I never got answer. But a man who was on the delegation of the president, Thomas Ariland, he was an accountant, a Togolese, with a Togolese father. He settled in our district called Nyanyake. One morning, every morning while the president was visiting, I was in their house, in the late Wilson's house. He would come outside looking for the boys in the house to do something, but since I was just there sleeping with cousin Samuel. So I would be on the porch in the morning. Then he would look around, then say, "Good morning, sir." He would say, "Yeah, who I gave him my name." I spoke good English, and he was impressed. I said, "My name is Joe Sampson." And he said, "Okay, will you please give me some money?" I said, "Yes, I will go and bring the water." So we did that for some monies, some days. Then he asked me, "You say you wrote the president. Have you gotten the answer?" I said, "No, sir." He said, "All right, only president you want to carry Monrovia?" I said, "No, if I can get to Monrovia to go to school." He said, "All right, I will carry you." So Thomas Allen brought me in a yacht. It was at the time when President Barclay died, and President Tokman did not travel in a yacht to come back, but he came with LNA, the plane. So we got on a yacht and we came here. We landed here at the port. I lived with Thomas Ariland and his family. I attended this place you used to call Monkey Camp, Monrovia College, which is now the African Methodist University there. I went to school there, and my mother, stepmother, I was living with Thomas Ariland's wife, and she was not too receptive about me. For some reason, she said I was frisky. But I was not frisky, but I was very committed to my school business. I did not like people sending for me when I'm in class, and people thinking underestimated my commitment for my school. And so I had problem with her. She had problem with me. Anyway, then I used to help one of my friends who was a police officer living with the late Councillor Chesson, Joseph Chesson. So I said, Jacob, I'm looking for somebody to live with, man. The place where I live in right there on Ken Johnson Road. The woman there giving me a hard time. She would call me out of class and all that kind of thing. And on a day we having class, that Monday morning, then she said, "I'm gonna wash clothes." I don't have problem washing clothes. I'm able to wash clothes. But she would do it on a school day, on Saturday and other days. She would want me to do different things. Then on Monday morning when we're supposed to go to school, then she said, she dish out a whole lot of clothes from the closet and said, "I'm gonna wash it." So Jogapo said, "Okay." He talked to Councillor Chesson, who was the Attorney General, for me to stay there. So they invited me. Chesson invited me that afternoon, and I went there. He asked for my name. Mommy was sitting there, Mrs. Chesson, Leona Chesson, and he asked me a question, and I answered with clean English. I was not just an ordinary country boy who came to school. I was an enlightened country boy. So the woman said, "He know plenty." So he speak good English. That's what she said. Mommy started having confidence in me the very day she met me. We call her Mommy. Then Councillor Chesson said, "So you told Jacob Ko you want to stay here?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Okay, if you steal, I will put you in the post stack. I will lock you up." Before I got there, the boys that were living with Chesson stole the police guns that he was he stored in his house for safety. And so he was very concerned about stealing. So he told me, if you steal, I'll put you in jail. I said, all right, sir. So he said, you can go and bring your things. He called Jacob Cole. He said, you take the car, let him go to the place. Tell the people I will want for him to stay with me. I said, okay. Jacob Cole went with me in a black car. So you see, I started riding a black car a long time from here. So we went down to Camp Johnson Road. Luckily, Thomas Ireland was there and Mrs. Ireland was there. Both of them were there. And Jacob Cole told them that Honorable Chesson had asked him to stay with him, and he accepted me. But he didn't want to take me from here unless he informed them. So Ireland said, okay. But Joe, if you want to go, you couldn't tell me. I will find you somebody. That's why he said, I didn't say anything. I picked up my thing, and I went to Chesson. I went right here on Ashmore Street, that old house. People not there now, it was a frame house, had upstairs and downstairs. That's where I went to school. The year I got in Chesson House, the year after that, I was finishing an elementary school. We took the Tuckman Scholastic Test, and I became second in math and second in English. So I got a scholarship. It was time for me to go to I got a scholarship to go to BWI for 4 years. My stepfather, Attorney General Joseph Chesson, had gone to, along with Foreign Minister, Secretary of State Grant, had gone to France. They were there for 6 months negotiating the boundary between Liberia and Guinea. So I went to school that morning. Chesson was not disposed for me to accept the scholarship. He wanted me to stay here in Monrovia and attend the laboratory high, you know, the high school in the University of Liberia. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go to school in Kipa. So Mommy made a decision in the absence of Pa Chesson that I should go on to BWI since I got a scholarship. So I went there on BWI. On BWI, I did well in school. I was not a brilliant student, but I passed my lessons and I was well known among my friends. The teachers knew me. I was a student leader. I was president of the junior class, and I was chairman of the sanitary committee on BWI. During my tenure, I used to tell seniors, if you don't clean your thing, you will not go to school. So people got to know me, and I liked being among people and active. I finished high school, I came. Mommy granted me a scholarship to go abroad. She sent me to University of North Carolina, called the North Carolina Central School, Law School. North Carolina Central University, and then they have the North Carolina Central Law School. I went there. She said, I will pay you way for 1 semester. I know the second semester you will be able to put yourself through school. The thing to do when you get there, they got a dining hall there. You can work in the dining hall. You could work in the library of the university. You could be part of the cleaning in the university and be cutting grass, or a maintenance man in the dormitory. That will help to pay for your tuition. I said, yes, ma'am. She paid my way. It was $400 to go to America in those days. And I got to New York. When I got to New York, I took a bus and went on to North Carolina, Durham. And I started my school. My tuition was paid, and so I didn't have any problem to give me a space in dormitory, and I was there. I passed my initial test. The second semester, I didn't have any tuition. I went to the office and told them that I didn't have tuition, but I wanted to be in school. So they said that there was a man called Philip Stokes. He made available a certain amount of money from his estate in New York City, that if Africans go to America, any black man, youth who didn't have money and wanted to be in school, that person they could take money from his estate to finance the education. So I went through school, under the scholarship of Phyllis Stokes Fund from New York City. And that's for my tuition, books, but my board and room, that is where I slept and what did I eat. I work in the kitchen, in the dining hall. First of all, I work in the kitchen, I help to cook the university students food. And from there, then they send me to the pantry. I was responsible for people, juniors, who were washing dishes, making the plate ready. I mean, it was an industry when the time to eat, thousands of students. Of course, there were plenty of girls, 7 girls to 1 boy. We were about 7,000 students, black. You see a spot of one black and white boys, white boys, black women and white girls and boys in our school. At the time, Martin Luther King was raving America for reform. And so they tried to integrate the school. So I work in the library, in the dining hall. I like working to the dining hall because I like to drink plenty of milk. So it was enjoyable. It was not a labor for me. I go to the dining hall, I ate plenty, and I came from a home where food was hard to find, so you give me plenty of food, you know I will eat it. So I enjoy myself there working in the dining hall. When I got to be in the second year, I got a job in the library. I work in the library, so I'm a devout librarian. But I didn't like packing books and checking people how many books they took and when they brought it. I didn't think it was a good endeavor for me. So I didn't go into library science. At the junior class, I made an application to go to the NCC Law School. I went and took the test. You do take the test in those days in the junior class. So I was able to pass. Then they call it aptitude test, law aptitude test. After our senior year, I got admitted in the school. I went to school, president of the student body from Africa. I participated in the law review writing. I wrote my article, I think it was republished in the law school here. In fact, I'm beginning to think now, I think I'll go in the law school and start teaching. I just forget, okay, I'll do that. So I wrote an article in the law journal. I haven't seen the law journal for a long time. So I think when I go start teaching, I will be editor of that law journal so we can have one more here. Because when I came from school, we had one. And I published something on land ownership and use in Africa. And so I had information about the problem now that they're having in Zimbabwe, where most of the arable land that taken by the settlers, the Indians, the white folks that took over Zimbabwe and many parts of Africa. And how here, the indigenous land, we don't have any land anymore. Our government declared that the land was for government and that they can take it, misappropriate it, and do anything with it. You just have to move. And so I wrote an article on that. So you see, from the beginning, I've been very active. All right, I finished college, I came home. I didn't I wanted to be a lawyer. And I didn't want to, since I didn't want to work just anywhere. So I wrote my name. I went to Daily Listener, the newspaper in town at the time, and published an advertisement and told them that I was a law student, a graduate from this school, and I want a job. Well, the Daily Listener published an article and put my picture to the bottom of my story. I didn't like that. My picture was supposed to be to the top of the story, not to the bottom of it. I didn't like it. They put my picture all the way to the last of the page. If people look up, they don't look down. I didn't like that. Anyway, so I later on I wrote President Tuckman to work in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they call it, State Department in those days. They said they had a position there. So I wrote President Tuckman. The answer was not forthcoming. So Oliver Bright right here, Simpson and Simpson Law Firm, Simpson and Bright Law Firm. They asked me. I went there looking for a job, and they gave me a job. So I started my practice right on the honor justice department. There I practiced law, and then later on, Secretary Graham gave me a job and wanted me to come and work in the State Department as the legal counsel. In those days, the State Department legal counsel was equivalent to that of Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. But when I got there, Tokma wrote the letter appointing me. I got a copy of it. But Graham did not give me the job. Graham gave the job to my friend Henry Reed Cooper, who was his cousin. I didn't apply. And of course, there was a rift between the Cooper family and the Tokman in some election of the True Party. And so they didn't answer Henry Cooper. But when they answered me, they appointed me, I got a copy of the letter. And then they called me there. But when I went there, I didn't get the job. Instead, they made me economic officer at the State Department.
Well, that enough for Councillor Chair Chipo, but I think he makes my point. Chair Chipo is an indigenous. He came from the village, way in the southeast. In fact, if you listen to his told narrative, he says that his grandfather, who was the chief, was also the chairman of the True Party. And he went to Maryland. He was stopping with one of his uncles, who was a watchman, but he was also going to the Episcopal High School. And you follow the story on how he gets his opportunity, go to be there by and then he goes to the States under the patronage of the Chessins. Yet he advocates this Congua and country divide, like a lot of people do, superficially, right? He's going to America. It was not new. This is in the 60s. He's mentioning he goes to America when Martin Luther King is in advocacy for civil rights. So it's in the 60s. So it's not new. Now, I'm trying to get an idea of what our country in relationship with indigenous and settler descendants were. And this is not to say that the indigenous people had privilege or were always availed of equal opportunities. That obviously is not to say. I mean, I take myself, for example, I was born and raised in Nima, except for following the Baptist church to come to the Baptist seminary once in a while. I'd spend my entire life in Nima school to college at Cottonton. But I've never felt underprivileged. Where I excel, I got the benefits, and that will apply to everybody else. For example, for our current foreign minister, Maxwell Kemaya, was in high school with me, as indigenous as he can come. He was very sharp. Today, look where he is. One may argue that time has changed. But I before I bring in flip the other side of the coin to discuss this perspective from the settler, the descendant of a settler. I just thought I should bring that. Church people going to the United States at North Carolina University in the 60s, as good as it was. There was a Liberian who went much earlier. Many went before even a Liberian. The first black man to graduate college from a medical school came out of Liberia. One may argue that he was the son of a settler. But let's look at this guy. And then we'll go on to the other side of the coin. Strange guy. You will notice that our panelists apparently have not shown up today. Messages that they are caught up in events celebrating Mother's Day. That's understandable. Well, then good to get a heads up, but we can have this discussion. Let's look at Mr. Wallow. Play won't be Wallow. Play won't be Wallow is crew as indigenous as it comes. but he was the first black person to graduate from, first African to graduate from Harvard University as far back as the class of 1910. He said that he did go to Columbia, uh, and then he went to Harvard, and then he also returned to Liberia, working government. During the crisis around Fernando Po, the forced conscript of the natives to work at a plantation in Fernando Po. That committee that was investigating Charles D.B. King, he served as secretary to that committee. He was a member of the House of Representatives. Also read about Plymouth Johnson Water, because there's something about him that also peculiar. A indigenous son who now has become educated. He's counted among the leaders of Liberia. He's in the higher social echelon. He was married to a native lady. And at some point, he got into a relationship with a more affluent daughter of a settler, and he wanted to divorce his wife. But she refused to accept the divorce. She said she still wanted her husband. Uh, I didn't know until recently that you can just not divorce somebody without cause. All right. So in order to effect that divorce, he, as a member of the House of Representatives, uh, connived with some of his friends in the House, and they passed a law, particularly for him. They passed a bill granting him his divorce. Let's check that out, but we'll leave that for another day. Let's go to the flip the other side of the coin. These testimonies, this statement that been made by Chipo was gathered from the TRC testimony, and the TRC testimony is a rich repository of Liberians telling the story about themselves, their relationship with Liberia, the war, and all that. And if you watch some of the key testimony, you can learn a lot about Liberia. I've been trying to get that of Estrada Bernard. He's the only cabinet minister who survived the coup because he had left the country a day before the coup. He never returned to Liberia for several years. At that testimony, he was asked a question relative to the same about Congua and country privilege or lack thereof. And I'd like us to listen to him, give him a chance as we did with Chair Chipo, and then we'll enter into some discussions. And let me find that again. It took forever to find that, but I think we can find it this time.
To the TR is the truth, nothing but the whole truth. So help me God. Please be seated. Oops.
Could,
Well, thank you very much, Commissioner Bull. First of all, I'd like to express my thanks and appreciation to the Commission for having invited me to your hearing. Unfortunately, and much to my surprise and disappointment, I read an article in the New Democrat indicating that a certain list of persons had refused to appear. And that was the New Democrat of December 9, 2008. And according to the sources of the TRC, there were two separate and distinct groups. My name appeared in one of the groups, and but I'd like to set the record straight and make it very clear that I have at no time refused to appear. And when he became president, he adopted a policy that all legal counsel should be transferred to the Department of Justice. and I was transferred to the Department of Justice, where I served as Deputy Minister of Justice under Clarence Simpson, who was then Minister of Justice. Labor as the Minister of Labor, Youth and Sports. I served there until then in 1978, 79, when there was a rice riot and all of that, I was a Minister of Labor. My services with the government of Liberia came to a close in 1980, as of April 1980. I was serving then as the Minister of Labor, Youth and Sports. And the Lone Star football team was to participate in the West African Conference. And that game was scheduled for the week of April 11th in Accra, Ghana. And the team was ready to travel, and we were using President Talbot's plane at the time. I had made up my mind before that I would not go to the game because the Lone Star team would not win, and I would be exposed and whatnot. So anyway, I decided not to go. So on the afternoon that the plane was supposed to have taken off with the players, the late Emmanuel Red, who used to work with me as Assistant Minister in Labor, Youth and Sports, called me from Spring Airfield and said, "Are you coming to the game?" I said, "Emmanuel, I'm not coming to the game." Emmanuel tried to persuade me to go to the game and gave me all the reasons why I should go to the game. He didn't convince me on the telephone. I said I was not going, and he said, okay. He left Spring Airfield and drove to my house. He said to me, "Chief, you gotta go, the boys will be disappointed." And I said, okay, let me just go in the bathroom, take a shower, get ready. And then I got dressed. I took with me 2 suits, 2 swearing suits. And I left with Emmanuel Rea, got on the plane, and went to Ghana. That afternoon, about 3 o'clock, 3:30, we left Liberia. Midnight, April 11th, running into the wee hours of April 12th, all hell broke loose. A military coup d'etat had taken place. Talbot was killed. People were arrested here, there, and yonder, and was incarcerated. From April 1980, I spent, after the coup, I did not even spend a night in Ghana. I left and went straight to the United States. I was in exile. I was in exile from 1980 through 2006. Never came back to Liberia, never thought about Liberia. I focused on one thing, and that was my family, my children. Because as you know, you people who were here, what happened? All properties of mine were destroyed. My funds in the bank in Liberia were transferred. I lost everything overnight. And had I been here in 1980, I would not be sitting here before you. as you well know. So in the whole process, you can see that I am a victim. I'm a victim. Notwithstanding, I tried to get my 2 children out of Liberia, and my wife became 3 states. And I had to make life all over. I had no money in a foreign account. And so we started with nothing. But we built on something because we knew how to work. And if you work and you are a good manager, you're bound to succeed. And my success today is because I'm a good worker and I'm a manager. So when you invite me here to talk about matters arising in 1979 through 2003, I wonder what can I say? I was not here. I was not here. I was not involved with Liberian politics, one way or the other. My focus was the maintenance of my family. I have nothing else to say. Whatever question you want to ask, you are free to do so at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mr. Bonner, for your explanation. And before proceeding, like I said, I was holding in for the chairman who had not arrived by virtue of having oversight for Montserrado County and historical review. In the center is the chairman, Jerome Fortier. Mr. Chairman, you want me to continue? With his permission, I shall continue. To what you said, first of all, on behalf of the TRC, we would like to apologize for the misinformation of putting your name in a newspaper that you refused to. Just as you said, health and welfare, those information, no better person could have given it and will be true than you serving as the best evidence. Now, we will turn the mic over to the respective commissioners who, if they have any questions on what you said or within their knowledge, they can ask you at this time. I will start with Reverend Coleman.
Testing. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Witness, for your brief but succinct presentation. I have 3 basic questions, but I just want a clarification before I start. Did you say that in 1980, when you left for Ghana for that football game, that right after the coup you left to go to America, or did you leave 82 or 81?
I am saying that in 1980, I went to Ghana with the football team. We arrived there on April 11th. April 11 into April 12, that's when we had the coup in Liberia. I left Ghana the very day, I think, but once I got the information of the coup and what was going on, I left Ghana because it was not safe for me, because all cabinet ministers had been arrested. They were put in jail, and those who were not arrested, and you did not have to be a cabinet minister, but people were just arrested at random because they look well-dressed, they look educated, and for whatever other reasons there may be. From Ghana, I did not put my foot back in Liberia, knowing the consequences, and I went straight on to the United States, where I got my legal education.
Thank you. So when you went to America, did you claim political asylum, or were
Yes.
you already a citizen?
I claimed political asylum. I
Okay.
had to, because had I come back to Liberia, I would have been killed. That I know.
Okay.
When the football team returned to Liberia from Ghana, sometime subsequently, I think Minister Willis Knuckles, he was a deputy minister, he worked with me, and also Emmanuel Rare. The soldiers went on the plane looking for Minister Bernard, and they did not go there with a band to give me in a 7 days. So no, I had no intention of coming back here.
All right. So during your period in America, did you do anything that would relate to the future of Liberia, or your focus
I
was just
did
on you and your family?
absolutely nothing relating to the future of Liberia during Tubman time. It was a True Week Party government. You worked for the True Week Party government. And when you work for the True Week Party government, you are a true weak. Some might disagree, but there was no registration, issuance of card and all of that. So technically, yes, you can look at me as a true weak.
Okay. For example, did you ever hold a position in the party? Were you ever one of his standard bearers? Were you ever one of his heads in office of a region or a group or anything like that?
I was a cabinet minister during the True Week Party government, and that's the extent. Now, maybe the cabinet minister could have been classified as the executive of the True Week Party, but that's the extent. I was not secretary, treasurer, no office of the True Week Party.
Okay. So you saw your allegiance to the party only as a means of keeping a job, not as someone who had real political concern.
When you say political concern, I'm not so sure what you mean.
Yeah, for example, I've worked with many companies, but I never joined any party, even though it was a True Week Party government during that time. But some people believe in the political realm, and they actually join parties and are part of it because they want to see a vision fulfilled and manifested through their political affiliation. So I was just wondering, were you, as a lawyer or someone trained more in the social science area and dealing with man, were you more concerned about the party, its vision, its structure, or were you just seeing the job as a means to an end and your party affiliation as an informal thing and not a real formal reality?
If I may, let me say that I'm not political. I'm a professional. My focus when I returned to Liberia was to work in the interest of the people, improve their standard of living, and improve the physical aspects of Liberia. During my years in the Ministry of Finance as well as in Public Works, I got involved with the workings of the PUA, Public Utilities Authority was called at that time. And what did we do? We looked at ways of providing electricity to the people in Liberia.
Background and understanding that you would have.
But maybe, and just maybe, it was not at the pace that people wanted, but changes were coming about. And if you look over the years, you can see the changes developing from one administration to the other. And that's where President Talbot came in during his administration of improving the standard of living of the people.
That's the feeling I'm getting from the statement you just made.
I am saying that President Talbot encouraged dialogue. That's what I'm saying.
Debt management.
Man, I'm a lawyer, and my role in the Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Finance, or Department of Finance at the time, was to review the legal documents, accounts, and transfer it to the central government for.
What happened later, we thank God and we know that that was not the time and God still had it for the purpose. And may his soul rest in peace. I know he's not with us now.
Thank you. I must add that Emmanuel was my very good friend. He worked with us at the Ministry of Justice, and we sent him to Columbia University. He got his master's degree in law. He came back, and we had a wonderful friendship. When I went to labor, he came with me. And he was like a brother.
Thank you. And my question, next question is, you were not in the country from 1979 up to the time of the conflict. But before that time, you held several positions in government. During that time, did you foresee any problems in terms of disparity between the indigenous people and the two-party government in terms of education, other social services? Did you foresee any problems? Or were there any voices advocating for change those days that you acknowledged?
You know, that question can be answered in so many ways, but I gave you my personal opinion. I find it very disturbing, when we continue to dwell on the indigenous people and whatever else category we have. From my education, from my training, and as a Christian, I look at all Liberians as being one. Now, maybe I'm an exceptional person, but I do. There's no difference among us. And the sooner we dispel that divisiveness, the better a country like Liberia will be. I'm not so sure whether there is any clear-cut preferences, indigenous and whatever else category you want to put. Because if you look at the history of Liberia, you find full participation of the indigenous and whatever other class you see. Where there has been education and you have the capacity, you are not denied. I have not seen it now. Maybe I'm blind to it because of who I am, but I have not seen one being kept back because of this indigenous, they come from the indigenous population. I look at the situation where Liberians needed to improve themselves. Whether you come from the Bassa tribe, Gribble tribe, Bellet tribe, whatever tribe, and you improve conditions of the people. We must stop. We have to stop this divide. That is bothersome and will go no place if we continue.
Well, you couldn't have said it better, right? Look, that's that's one version of the national anthem and the pledge. I tell you what, we didn't get our panelists today because they were occupied, but I think Estrada Bernard left us with the crust of the debate that we should be having. Are we better off as a nation trying to identify a division between us that really doesn't seem to exist? We'll give an example of Chechipo, Plemo Wallo, even myself, raised by a single mother, five of us, and that there are no opportunities that we work hard for that we could not get. We have a country to fix. Listen to our children singing the national anthem and saying the pledge, even in the 21st century. This song that was written around independence, that every little child in Liberia or every Liberian should know how to sing, at least the creeds, know how to say it. They stay struggling while the teachers are there. Probably the teachers taught them how to say that wrong. As we get into the election circle, already we are making distinctions between candidates on the same basis. Oh, this is a Congua ticket. This is a country ticket. To rephrase or to quote Estrada Bernard, we can get nowhere as a nation if we think that the reward should be based on ethnicity, that the jobs should be given on the basis of ethnicity, that contracts should be given on the basis of ethnicity. If we go back to our founding creeds, it's clear that we are a nation that's created with equal opportunity for all. We need to apply it. We need to make the laws applicable to everybody. We need to make sure justice works for everybody. We need to provide equal opportunities for people to get education and equal opportunities to serve. Even in our current dispensation, officials of government, up to the president and vice president, are making statements to the tune that, oh, if you don't join us, you can't work for the government. Even though there is an article in the Constitution, I think it's Article 18, that says every Liberian citizen is entitled to equal opportunity to work and equal pay. If we pay lip service to all those virtues of our country and rather hang on to things that divide us more, like Estrada Bernard said, we're not going to go nowhere. So, hey, I hope we've had a good day today, in spite of the fact that we didn't get our panelists. Maybe the topic in this election circle was a little bit too spicy for some people who have political affiliations. But thank you for giving your time, and thank you for your patience and indulgence, even in the period where we had some technical glitches and difficulties. Today is Mother's Day. If you are a mother, you're a woman out there, whether married or single, happy Mother's Day. Wish you the very best. And I will leave you with a song that says something about our nation. Today is Sunday. We are like a weary traveler trying to find our way. Thank you for joining us on Election Central today, and you have a good Sunday. Weary traveler.
Weary traveler, beat down from the storms that you have weathered. Feels like this road just might go on forever. Carry on. You keep on giving, but every day this world just keeps on taking. Your tired heart is on the edge of breaking. Carry on. Weary traveler, restless soul, you were never meant to walk this road alone. It'll all be worth it, so just hold on. You won't be weary long. No more searching. Heaven's healing's gonna find where all the hurt is. When Jesus calls, we'll lay down all our heavy burdens. Carry on, oh, weary traveler, restless soul. You were never meant to walk this road alone. It'll all be worth it, so just hold on. Weary traveler, you won't be weary long. No, you won't be weary long. You won't be weary long. Someday soon we're gonna make it home. 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 Gonna make it home. Weary traveler, restless soul, you were never meant to walk this road alone.